All right, welcome back to another edition of Current Affairs Taiwan. I'm Donovan Smith with Michael Turton and a special guest this time, Scott Ellinger. Now, we'll be talking to Scott in a little bit. We're going to kick off with some the local recent political news, and then we'll talk with our special guest. So, Mike, do you want to kick us off on the...
let's talk about my favorite topic of this election, Han Kuo-yu's slide. So KMT presidential candidate Han Kuo-yu basically seems to have bottomed out in the polls recently, in the last few weeks.
Just a slow slide, and then, he seems to have flattened a bit, yeah.
What did you say was his floor? Like 22% or something?
I've been guessing that it's 20-something.
That's where he is now.
Well, there's some polls recently that had a bounce, where he actually came back up. But then other polls, he seems to be right around... So he seems to have actually like leveled out or even bounced up a little bit, but like 1-2 percentage points or something. Yeah. So I wouldn't, the polls, I wouldn't put too much weight in. I'm looking more at the long-term trend line.
A lot of undecided still.
Yeah.
Like over 30% in every poll.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's still, and we're the election is in January and we're just entered November. So a lot of things could happen in the next few weeks.
Yes, definitely.
So, and who wasn't mentioned this week? Guo Taiming, Terry Guo, the former head of Foxconn, not in the news except for that lawsuit he filed against some netizens for abusing his family online.
Yeah.
And, sorry. And what else was going on this week? Lots of speculation about James Soong.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. With the PFP, because the PFP, of course, is one of four parties who can still nominate a presidential candidate. And so there's been a lot of news about James Soong he's considering running for the PFP.
For the People's First Party.
Yeah, the People's First Party.
Well, everyone's saying that he's going to take votes from Han. And it seems obvious that they appeal to the same pool of over 50 voters who are on the conservative side. But there's a lot of Taiwanese out there who are going to vote for Soong. How well did he do in the last election? 12% or something?
12.6 or 12.8. Yeah. It's just shy of 13%.
A lot of that's going to come from Han if he polls like that this time.
I suspect he may also pull from Tsai as well, because I suspect that there's a big chunk. If you look at the party ID, for the DPP is far lower than for President Tsai's support.
Right.
So I suspect that she's getting support from people who would normally be light blue, but they think Han is a little too out there for them.
Right.
So it wouldn't surprise me if he took votes from both sides, frankly. I think he's going to pick up a lot of the light blues.
Soong.
Yeah, Soong. I think he's going to get the light blues, some of whom might have switched to Tsai because she's stable and,
That's a possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were talking, there's a whole bunch of pieces on the legislative election that came out this week. Lev Nachman pointing out, Lev Nachman, who's a researcher here, based, what we were saying, California,
I think it's UC Irvine, I think so.
Yeah. And Lev's specialty is the NPP, the New Power Party. That was the party with Freddie Lim of Chthonic.
Yeah, who's now left the party.
Yeah. And so Lev wrote a piece on the legislative elections saying, hey, remember, right now the KMT as a party is polling higher than the DPP as a party, as you just mentioned, and that might herald the KMT comeback in this election in the legislature. But you were saying, Donovan, in your piece that also came out this week, that's less of a possibility. Why is that?
Well, okay, because so I was taking a look at the numbers. Now, a lot of people, there's a lot of heat around the third parties right now. I put a cap on third parties and independents at about 12. That's about as good as I think they're going to do. They don't
12
have
seats.
Seats, yeah.
12 seats in
out
the
of 113 in the Legislative Yuan.
Right.
Now, the Legislative Yuan is 113 seats. There's 6 of which are reserved for 3 for Highland and 3 for Lowland indigenous communities. Those 6 last time went 5 for the KMT, 1 for the DPP. It'll probably be something similar this time. At best, the DPP will pick up 1 or lose 1. I figure they're going to continue to lean KMT. And then there's 34 party list seats, which are apportioned proportionally to to parties that poll at 5% or higher in the party list vote when people go in to vote.
Right.
And then the remaining 70 some odd seats are geographical districts. They represent a district in Taiwan. So. My take was that if you look at the polling on the party ID, I just finished the thought on the third parties and independents. So the problem that they have is that they're going to have trouble in the geographical districts. We might see Freddie Lim and or Hong Tzu-young might be reelected. Another independent might win somewhere else. You might get, a third party win a geographic seat somewhere. The Constitution Party has the Mingguodang chairwoman, and she polls fairly well. Who knows? I mean, I haven't even checked to see if she's running, but there's a few of these, handful of the possibly independent winners. And then the third parties. They right now are polling in the 20-25% range. I think their best case scenario is they get maybe 25% of the vote, and I think they will get a fairly respectable vote for the party list. But my concern there is that, first of all, some of those votes are just going to be wasted, basically, because they'll vote for parties that won't meet the 5% threshold. So but just say ultimate best case scenario. Let's say they do get a quarter or even a third of all the votes in the party list. And they all miraculously are for parties that go past the 5% margin. That's still 10 or 11 total.
Seats.
Yeah, that's it. So realistically, I don't think they're going to get more than 20-25 because some of those third-party votes are going to go to like the SDP and the Trees Party and
all those parties that are too small.
Right.
Yeah.
So even if they got a quarter, we're still looking at 7, 8, 9, something like this.
Okay.
Now Nathan Battle put the cap at 8. That sounds perfectly reasonable to me.
Sure.
We came to very similar conclusions. And then now Lev thinks that the KMT is going to come storming back and they're going to reclaim the LY. And his point basically being is that last time was an anomaly post-Sunflower Movement.
You mean the 2016 election?
Yeah, the 2016 election. It was a big green wave. And as I pointed out actually in my article, I don't think he did, but is that historically, once the one-party state ended in the 90s, the KMT still controlled the LY either through a plurality in allies or an outright majority.
Right.
The legislative UN there up until 2016. So, but I was looking at it, and the thing is that the KMT the polling, unfortunately, on the party list or party identification is all over the place. I mean, wildly all over the place. But they look like the more respectable polls seem to have the KMT at the upper 20s into low 30s. They had 28.6, I think, last time.
Right.
So they're not actually polling a whole lot better than they were last time.
Right.
So they might pick up a few seats there. Now, on the ground, will incumbency be an advantage in this election or not? It's hard to say because the last two elections have been throw out the bums elections.
And the incumbents aren't doing so well in key areas.
Well,
Kaohsiung,
yeah.
Taichung.
But I'm talking about, I mean, specifically I'm referring to the legislators, right? The district legislators.
Well, but what I mean is when an area is controlled by a party, their candidates are going to be favored for...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
by the city government, yeah.
And that is where, and I brought up a whole section in my article about buyer's remorse.
Right.
There's right now the least popular, because in the 2016 elections last year, the local elections, Kaohsiung was won by Han Kuo-yu, the current KMT candidate. Lu Xiuyan, a KMT, won in Taichung. Wang Huimei took back Zhanghua, which is the biggest administration outside of the big 6 cities. And central Taiwan is the main battleground.
Right.
Taichung, Zhanghua. Now, the thing is, there was this big sweep last time, this big pan blue sweep that swept in all these KMT leaders. The problem is that the vast majority of them are polling terribly. The last Commonwealth poll of their administrations, dead last, Han Kuo-yu and Kaohsiung. Second to last was Liu Xiaoyan or Ko-Wen-je. I can't remember the order, but she was so the KMT is dead last. Second to last, I think it was Taichung's Liu Xiaoyan.
Right.
And number 19 out of 22 was Wang Huimei and Zhang Hua, KMT. The majority of the ones who won in the last sweep are not in the top half. They only had like 3. The ones that the KMT had in the top were like Lianshan County, Taidong, Hualien.
Sure. Long-time strongholds with small populations.
Right.
Yeah.
The only exception being Hoyoi's New Taipei City was at 7, I think, and Chiayi, you could kind of count it as a populous place at, I think, number 8.
So we've talked about Ho Yoi before, and he's not participating in this election, basically.
Yeah.
So would you say that...
he may be helping legislators campaign, but he's not helping Han Kuo-yu.
No, he's not helping Han. So basically, and it's not only the problem that these local leaders aren't doing well, Han himself has no coattails, apparently.
Yeah. So he's going to depress the vote for the KMT. The local leaders there's buyer's remorse. Polling has shown they would be thrown out now.
Right.
And so really what I think a lot of it's going to come down to, the DPP isn't terribly popular either, though.
No.
So I think that it's really what's going to come down to is I think that third parties are going to do better on the polling and the party list. And they're going to, a lot of votes which went to the DPP last time will probably go to them. So the DPP will do lower in the party list than last time. KMT might do a little bit better, but not a lot.
Right.
And that's just going to come down to the districts. And the big battlegrounds now, there's a lot of buyer's remorse with the KMT. So the KMT, I expect, will probably bounce back with some seats. But the chances that they're going to seize back the majority, I think not a hope in hell, frankly.
Wow. That's a strong statement.
Yeah, I think I'd be stunned.
Folks, you heard it here first, okay?
Yeah.
So
I don't even expect them to pick up all that many seats.
Wow.
If I had to guess, they'll right now. I mean, obviously, a lot can change between now and the elections.
Sure.
That they currently have 35 seats. They'll keep almost all of those, and they may pick up. I think they'll be between 35 and 45 seats in the next legislative election.
That would be very good news for Tsai Ing-wen's second term.
Yeah.
If the DPP maintains its majority in the legislature. But the legislative process is so messed up with the caucuses, and it's very difficult to get anything done.
Yeah.
The way it's set up. The way it's set up is the small parties can block the majority party. So.
And that's what Ko-Wen-je's Taiwan People's Party. He specifically said that's their goal, is to try and deny a majority to the two major parties.
Yeah.
So.
All right, so why don't we bring Scott into this discussion? He's been sitting here so patiently.
I was going to watch myself here on the monitor the whole time. I'm getting a little bored.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm stuck in between two domestic political analysts here that are experts here on Taiwan.
I thought you were going to say domestic violence experts.
No, I want to say domestic.
Domestic violence.
Violence.
So can you tell us a little bit about yourself for the audience?
Real quick, Scott Ellinger. I've been in Taiwan for 10-plus years. Formerly worked at AIT, retired U.S. Army officer, and specialized in Taiwan affairs, both in the United States and the Pentagon, and then here for 4 years in AIT. And mainly I worked all the Army relationships between the U.S. Army and the Taiwan Army, and then the Pentagon mainly at the high level between Joint Staff and the M&D here, the Ministry of National Defense. So I have quite a good background on understanding what that relationship's all about.
So, wow, you were talking about, let's just dive right in.
Okay.
Before the show, you were talking about the reserve system, that you would like to see that. You were talking, actually, you had mentioned that none of the candidates has said much about the military.
Yeah, we were talking before. What I found really interesting is that both candidates has been completely in the dark reference their opinions of the military and what they're going to do to improve the military, as well as not just domestic issues, but what is their national defense and what does it mean for Taiwan itself. I don't see any candidate even touched it in the last, 5 months.
Very little, yeah.
Very little, almost nothing.
Well, Hangul, you did criticize some of the U.S. arms sales there for briefly.
That's pro forma KMT.
Yeah.
Every time there's an arms sale, the Deep Blues criticize it.
Yeah, well, everybody's going to always criticize FMS, the foreign military sales, because they always believe that stuff is being sold as junk, but actually it's not. And that's one issue that's a whole nother topic, but that's mainly what we call EDA, that's excess defense articles, and so it's just given away, it's free. What happens is when they buy, when they get something free, they'll refurbish it, and that's where you spend money, is refurbishing this, broken piece of equipment or old equipment, and then they refurbish it back to new. But everything else it's a standard price, so whatever the base model price is, regardless of what country or for the United States, it's the same price. So if it's $10, that's the base model's $10. Mm-hmm. But the other thing is, what we were talking before is this transition to an all-volunteer force. How do you fund it, and what does this mean? Since the conscripts system is completely done, except for this 4 months, you go to basic training, and then after basic training is done, then you're on this mobilization thing. You get recalled once or twice in the next 8 years. So, what would be really interesting is if one of the candidates could talk about what they're going to do and actually create a reserve system that's meaningful and actually worthy of doing something.
How is the reserve system set up at present?
Well, currently what it is that if you do your basic training, okay, the old system was you did 14 months of active duty.
Right.
Before that, like 5 years ago, it was about 10 years ago, maybe it was like 2 years or 18 months.
Yeah, and then they had 3 years.
And then like 20 years ago, it was 3 years. And so starting just this year is they instituted the 4 month of the basic training. You learn your advanced individual training, which is whatever that specialty is, which is mainly going to be infantry.
Right.
Do that, and then you're done.
That.
And then you're going to be assigned to a unit somewhere in Taiwan, depending on where you live. And then you'll be mobilized, and you'll be called probably once every 4 years or 2 times within an 8-year period. Mm-hmm. So it can fluctuate depending on how you want to be recalled. And then you're recalled for anywhere from 5 to 7 days, and that's it. And so that's basically what their mobilization is all about in their reserve system. But going back to what I think is important is looking at a good model would be something like, the Israeli Defense Force is a good model, or the United States Reserve System or National Guard system would be something that, if they would mimic that and create a professional reserve system for not just the active duties that do the skeleton units for the reserve system, it's actually having professional reserve.
What do you
enlisted.
mean by skeleton units?
So you'll have like the reserve command,
Uh-huh.
and it'll have all the top leaders there, and it'll be broken down in accordance with its level of how they fill the ranks.
So you've got like a general, and under him there's like 3 brigade commanders.
Yeah, it'd be something where you'll have the skeleton unit. So you'll have all the leadership positions are filled,
Right.
and then the mobilized units then fall underneath the leadership.
So there's a brigade commander there, for example, but he's got no troops under him until the reserves are called.
Yeah, they're mobilized, and
then
that's what
they
forms
suddenly
the
jump
unit.
into the brigade.
Yeah, it's very similar to like some of the other countries in the world. You had I think Norway's like this,
Yeah.
or Sweden, and then you have you also have I think Israel's very similar. But when they're recalled, I mean they've been training for like 10 years.
Right.
So when they come back, they're pretty well trained.
Right.
It's versus 4 months.
But we don't have that in Taiwan.
No, you have 4 months. That's it.
Well, I was getting excited when you referred to skeletons. I thought they had a skeleton army.
Well,
to complement
Halloween
the
was just
awesome
over.
me, but,
Halloween was over.
A Harryhausen movie.
No, but what I think is important is if one of the candidates, or I'd like to see, is someone actually talk about what will they do with creating a professional reserve force or National Guard, very similar to the United States, where you have people that did 4 years active duty or 6 years active duty, or 10 years active duty, and they come off, and then they stay within the system, and then that person's already trained, and then you have a professional career as a reservist, like the United States.
Right.
So you once a month for 2 days on the weekends, and then you have their 2 weeks during the summer. And I think that's where you can keep
You do that every year.
skill set. Yeah, that's every year's like that if you want to do 20 years.
How do employers handle that in the U.S.?
Well,
Because here, I think they
Well,
go
it's
through the roof.
mandated by law.
Right.
So if you join the reserves or National Guard, your employer cannot fire you, or any derogatory things can happen to you when you're mobilized.
Yeah.
So like say you got mobilized and you have to go to Iraq or Afghanistan during OAF and OIF, is you go there for a whole year, then they come back and you're back to your job. You cannot fire them. It's illegal. So it's a law in the United States.
I see.
Where if Taiwan passed that law, then I think they could probably have a possibility for it.
Do you think it would be observed any better than the other labor laws are?
Well, who knows? We don't talk about labor laws. But that's just kind of a teaser on what I think would be important for one of the candidates to look into. Having that type of system. And I know there's been discussions about it, but I can't go into those details. But it's been there. But is it ever going to be instituted, and will it become the reality? That's the question.
Well, I mean, the good news is, I mean, Taiwan's under no threat at all. I mean, there's certainly nothing outside of Taiwan that would threaten us, is there?
Poor defense planners.
Yeah. So, I mean, no. This was interesting, actually. It was on Taiwan this week on ICRT, and the other guest. I didn't really get to say a whole lot about it, but was basically arguing that Taiwan should not be purchasing all this expensive weaponry and should instead be putting it into other priorities, education, healthcare, this sort of thing. And I'm not saying that those other things are unimportant, but I said Taiwan is facing a potentially existential threat here from China. So but so here's two questions here for you, if I can jump in. I guess I'll just keep it to one. I think we can safely agree that you'd agree that we need to be putting a little bit more into defense here against China, and that it is a genuine threat. I assume you're on board with that.
I agree.
But the other thing is do you think that Taiwan is buying the right kinds of weaponry?
Well, I do know from the Air Force perspective, the 66 F-16 Victors that they're purchasing, that's something that they've wanted ever since the mid 2000s. Mm-hmm. That I do know, and finally it got approved, and then they're going to get it. I think on some of the hardware perspectives of it, I mean they do need these new fighters for the current peacetime situation that they're in. That's very important for them to maintain this deterrent. Because it is important, and it does keep things, and it keeps that center line where you have the Taiwan Strait. You got that center line there. That's something that keeps that line there, and you don't get that slicing all the way back to, or all the way to the Taiwan, island periphery itself. Right there,
right.
You can go past Penghu. So that's important for there. But when you look at some of the other hardware pieces, there is a system where they go through and they analyze what is needed in the sense of hardware. I mean, the M1 Abrams main battle tank, that's a good purchase if it's used effectively and correctly. So you have to get the right training. So when you buy hardware, it's not just the piece of equipment. You have to have the training that goes behind it, i.e. like the Apaches. You have to have a training program that's there for the long term, and they learn all the tactics, techniques, and procedure called TTPs that go along with the piece of equipment. That is also very critical to any piece of equipment you buy. The other part is looking at mobile. Anything that's mobile is the best. So you have mobile artillery. That's very good.
Yeah.
Anything that is man-based, so certain types of man-portable weapon systems, like javelins and stingers, buy more of them because that's mobile, and that's the best.
Javelins and stingers are surface-based missile systems for shooting down airplanes and killing tanks.
Javelin is ground-based,
yes.
And so it's fire and forget. So once it locks onto its target, you fire it and then you run away.
But it shoots at ground targets.
That's a ground target.
Yeah.
Or it can shoot another target that's fixed out, say for instance in the water.
Right.
And it fixes on that piece of equipment.
Oh.
It'll fix and it's there.
So theoretically you could use it to kill landing craft that are coming towards a beach.
And they're still in the water.
Cool.
And then Stingers is a ground-to-air missile system. Same thing. Once it locks on, you fire and you run away.
Can I get some javelins for Kending? Because there's some There's some jet skis down there I really want to take out.
Well, after, what's going on in the United States, probably not a good idea with Ukraine. So I don't get mixed up with trying to get those. But so, I mean, basically, there's a process that goes through. And my main point is I really think it would be important is hardware is good, but the other important thing is the software. And that's all the issues that deal with manning and personnel. And so it goes back to hardcore training. It's having a realistic basic training system. The basic training system should be modeled after the United States, which I very strongly have always advocated. And then the advanced individual training needs to be something worthwhile. And then creating a reserve system that's realistic, that would meet their needs, which I think the National Guard or reserve model would be the best model that they could use here for Taiwan.
Do you think both sexes should serve in the Army like they do in Israel?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's very important. I mean, you see it in the United States. We've just had a couple females pass the Ranger School. I mean, regardless of, I'm not going to get involved in if it's right or wrong, but I think that's pretty hardcore. And there's women out there that can do infantry things.
Right.
And so if they're ready to go, sign them up and give them an M16. We're ready to go. That's good defense. Love a country.
I think the more people involved, the better too. I think if everyone is pulling together, I think that's helpful.
Well, the other thing we talked about also, it's the national authority also advertising the military is not just defense, but there's a lot of other things. We talked about like all the HADR, the human,
like what? Give me some examples.
So humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, all those missions. So, during Baba Shuizai, the Typhoon Morakot, great example of how you could use what they did there, and you advertise that for why the military is important, why it's an honorable profession, and at the same time is why would I want to join the military in Taiwan? Well, I mean, right there, that's your showcase. It's like all the hard effort that they'd done for months and months down there. And I was down there for quite a few of the operations. And you just see people, they just give it purely for helping somebody else. But it was never capitalized as a way to advertise and recruit members to come in. And the same thing happens whenever there's a disaster in Taiwan, who's the first to respond? You'll have the local fire department, and then who's right behind them? All the military, and they get sent in. So typhoons, earthquakes, and anything that's a natural disaster, man-made or a natural disaster, who's the first one in? It's always the military, and they're ready to go.
Right.
But they're treated. They're not treated the way they should be treated, and that's not a military problem. It's a national level program where I think if the national authority could actually create this image that they need to be respected the way they did, that they should be, like in the United States or Canada, where it's the top 50 job to have in the United States.
I think President Tsai the other day came out and or someone, a top official, was saying, I can't remember if it was her or someone high in the government was saying that they wish to see military members wear their uniform in public more often.
I agree.
I mean, a lot of people that I've talked to who are securities experts, they say that there's morale problems, and there's all and there's sort of like a bizarre, like what exactly are they defending is something that seems to be a little murkily. It's a little murky, and I've talked to young people here, and again, they seem like kind of like, I don't really want to be involved in the Army. They might fight if China were to attack, but they wouldn't really want to join the Army. And then, of course, there's the bizarre situation where China does not have an army. Taiwan has an army, but it's branded as the Chinese Army. Go figure.
Yeah, right.
By the way,
that's always a problem.
If you're a little confused by my comment that China does not have an army, it doesn't. In China, the People's Liberation Army is the armed wing of the Chinese Communist Party, which is it's the only time in history, one of the very few times in history, that's actually a wing. Their standing army is a wing of a political party.
I think it'd be like the Nazis were like that, weren't they?
Yeah, I don't know.
The Wehrmacht wasn't like that.
Not the Wehrmacht, but it was the
brown shirts.
The brown shirts, yeah. I'm thinking of the brown shirts, yeah. But my main point is, I think where you're taking this is, it again, it goes back to, you know, the military is important, but it's not just defense. It's also realistic. That would meet their needs, which I think the national authority could actually create this image that they need to be respected the way they should be treated. And why would I want to join the military here and be part of it? And
Yeah.
so that's a national authority issue. It's not a military issue. It's not for the military to solve. It's for the national authority. It's for the entire legislative UN. It's for all the city and county elected officials. It's their responsibility to create this because, again, who's going to rescue you if there's an earthquake and this building falls down? Who's it going to be? You're going to have some of the fire department here, and the other 80% of the helpers are going to be the Taiwan military.
Yep.
They're going to be here digging you out.
Look, if Donovan is actually trapped under the rubble here, I'm digging in here because his whiskey collection is amazing.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll rob that first, and then we'll depart. Got it. So we know exactly what to
right.
rescue. We're rescuing the whiskey.
How located by the sound of his voice. He's got to be near his whiskey, right?
No, right.
Yeah.
You got to keep hydrated.
21-year-old, 25-year-old, that's going first.
I know you're coming for me, lassie.
And on that happy note, perhaps we should wind this up.
Yep, and as you can tell from the background here, apparently the Blues lost.
Blues lost, yes. It's like gray in the back.
Pay no attention to the curtain behind the man.
Technical problems every time. All right.
Well, I want to say thank you, Michael and Don.
Thank you for
Well,
coming.
thank you for coming.
For having me as a guest here, and I hope in the future we can talk a little bit more and kind of peel back some of the other issues, reference Taiwan, and why is it important
Yeah.
to not just the Taiwanese defense, but why is it important to all the democracies in Asia?
Yeah.
Right.
And it goes back to some of my research I've done, and Michael and I have talked about why is this important as one of the most important pieces of terrain in the greater Asian area.
Right.
I mean, it really is. Michael and I have talked about this, so I think it'd be a great topic next time.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I'll look forward to it. All right, folks. See you around. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.